Okay, I want to thank everybody for attending our caregiver webinar today. It's on planning for the future, and Carrie Campoff is one of our occupational therapy students who's completing her capstone experience with us, and that's required for her doctoral degree in occupational therapy. Carrie is an occupational therapy student from South Dakota University, and she's actually, during this day of everything being virtual, Zooming in from Iowa, her home, while she's doing the presentation for this experience. And I will share with folks, if you're not already aware, but Carrie is a caregiver herself for her father, who is a survivor of stroke. So Carrie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and thank you.
All right, hello everyone, and thank you all for joining on this beautiful, a little chilly day. And again, I just want to thank you for joining, and I really appreciate that you're taking the time out of your day to attend. And I really hope that this is beneficial information for you and your family. So I just kind of wanted to talk about why this topic is important. And while thinking about the future and making these important plans isn't the most comfortable and easy topic, it is very important to have a plan in mind for various scenarios. So today, we will be going over ways to prevent falls, staying prepared for emergencies, and making financial, medical, and end-of-life decisions. As caregivers, it is very important to have plans set in place and to communicate these plans with your close family or friends to ensure that if you were no longer able to make decisions or if a crisis were to arise, there would be a plan in place to ensure that the person you support is not faced with making these difficult decisions on their own, and that there would be someone available to help them in caring. And not only can these plans help caregivers feel more prepared, but they also are valuable for survivors of stroke. During my fieldwork experiences, I have discussed with survivors that they worry that one, they would have an emergency themselves and they would feel like they are more of a quote burden, in their words, to their family members. Or two, they would fear that their caregiver may have a medical emergency and they would not know where to turn. So it's important to talk about these decisions. And while it may be sad and difficult to even begin thinking about it, having this plan can help you and your loved one have some peace of mind. And research does show that these conversations help survivors and caregivers alike have less guilt and anxiety. And then further, knowing these plans ahead of time will ensure that decisions are made rationally and collaboratively without the influence of distress or heightened stress in a hospital setting. And then lastly, even if you do have a lot of these plans already made, I think that this is still a really good topic to go over and have a refresher on, as some of your plans may need to be updated since the last time you thought about them. So the first thing we'll talk about is falls. Falls are a concern for many caregivers and survivors of stroke alike, as strokes impact balance in a majority of survivors of stroke. There are many ways that you can adapt your living environment to make sure that you are eliminating fall risk. And furthermore, decreasing fall risk in your home is also taking steps towards aging in place. And aging in place is a term in occupational therapy that is used when people want to remain living in their own home for as long as possible, rather than needing assistance at a long-term care facility. This generally involves making adaptations to your home, which I am sure many of you have already begun to do so after a stroke or as you age. The first step that many OTs recommend is to make sure that your home is clear of clutter and that you and your family get into habits of keeping things this way. This could include making sure that shoes are put back on a rack neatly rather than kicked off to the side. Or another example would be to always fold up blankets rather than let them drape on the ground. Additionally, make sure that the area around your bed is clear of storage underneath the bed, and consider getting rid of a bed skirt, if you have this, to further prevent falls. Other items to help you age in place and to prevent falls would be to install grab bars near the toilet and shower and raised toilets to increase the safety in the restroom. Some people may fear that installing these items permanently may impact their ability to sell the house in the future. There are removable toilet safety frames, as pictured here. There are also kinds that come with a removable seat riser as well. And in addition, there are grab bars which can be suctioned to the shower wall, which can be also removed in the future. It's important to remember, though, that sinks and towel bars are not meant to be used as grab bars, and leaning on these surfaces habitually could lead them to break, which could also result in a fall and ruin that appliance. Another step that I'm sure you've been told multiple times, but I'll say it again, is to remove unnecessary rugs around your home. It is understandable to want to have rugs in the bathroom, such as by the shower. It is then important that these rugs are anchored to the ground to prevent them from sliding around or getting kicked up. Some suggestions include ensuring that your rugs maintain their rubber backing, updating your rugs as they wear out, or buying rug anchors or rug grippers or rug pads. And you can find these for low cost online, but make sure to read the reviews because some of the adhesives can leave marks on the floor. This rug pad that I have here costs about $30 on Amazon, which would provide a great base of support for the rug. So other fall risks include pets, and while we all love our little fur babies, when they walk around our feet, it could easily lead to falls. So it may be helpful to keep them in a separate room or blocked by a baby gate, especially if your loved one who experienced a stroke is at home alone. Another method I discovered from personal experience is the power of wearing shoes while you're at home. Those who have had a stroke and those who are older and people with diabetes, which is a very common comorbidity with a stroke, they all have sensory changes in their extremities. So it may be easier for them to slip and slide around on the carpet if they're barefoot or just in socks because of these sensory changes. So try to make sure they wear sturdy shoes around the house throughout the day. And then lastly, a big principle of aging in place is making sure that the essentials are all on the same floor and are accessible. Ideally, there would be a full bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, and laundry room all on the main level of the home. If you decide to move to a new home, these are features of a home to keep in mind that will decrease fall risk and make it most livable as you and your family age. Additionally, if your current home does have various levels, there are still ways to make these safer. This includes adding railings on both sides of the stairs and adding an additional grab bar at the top of the staircase for an extra place to grab on as they pull themselves towards the top. And they can also have appliances that are easily to access, such as laundry appliances that are at a good height. So next, no matter how many modifications you make, there is always the risk that your family member will still have a fall. So it's important to have a plan on if a fall were to occur, especially if this were to happen when the survivor of stroke is alone. So most of us have probably seen the commercials for Life Alert. When the person who fell needs assistance presses the button, the Life Alert will be alerted and they will talk with you to see if emergency services need to be sent. They will also make a call to the caregiver who is listed on their contact sheet. And they will also notify multiple parties if the first person does not answer. Even if your loved one struggles with aphasia and cannot describe their needs, they will still make sure that someone is contacted to provide help. Nowadays, not only does this come as a necklace, but that can be tucked under the shirt, but there are also bracelets that serve the same function. I think that these bracelets look pretty similar to watches and are just a little bit more fashionable than the necklace. However, the downfall that I've experienced when working at a retirement home is that when these devices are newer, it's easy to accidentally press them, which may cause you to panic for no reason. However, knowing that your loved one will be able to contact someone if they fall or need help will provide you with some peace of mind. In addition to Life Alert, Life Saving Leader is another brand that has great reviews. In addition to Life Alert, Siri can be used to call for emergency services. Someone can use this to either call the ambulance or to call a caregiver. I tested this on my phone just to call a family member, and the phone does not have to be unlocked to use the Hey Siri function. If you feel that this route may be easier and cheaper for your family rather than Life Alert, try to have your family member get in the habit of carrying their phone with them around the home at all times. This could include always keeping it in a pocket or wearing a phone holster. Another way they can call for help if they are not carrying their phone around is to use an Alexa or an Echo device. According to Google, an Echo device can call 911 in the same way as Siri, but not Alexa. However, on the Alexa device, you can assign someone to be an emergency contact. So all you'd have to say is, Alexa, call my emergency contact. So the obvious downfall with Siri and Alexa is that they do require voice control. So Life Alert may be a better option for someone who does have aphasia. And for all of these three options, it is a good idea to do several emergency drills where the person who is staying at home practices using these controls to call for help. In addition, falls may also occur when you are at home, but not all falls require emergency services. But I wanted to point out that it's never a good idea to try to lift an adult off of the floor on your own. It's really easy to tug on their arm in a way that may end up hurting them, and you may also hurt your back in the process. Therefore, it may help to have someone in mind who could be your go-to neighbor or someone who is close to you that could buzz over and help you out. And even if you do not end up calling emergency services, it is wise to continue to monitor them for any injuries in the following days. Many people land on their wrists and tailbones, so it's important to monitor for any swelling, tenderness, or change in function after something like this. And I've included a couple of videos on the handout that I will be emailing you guys tomorrow on videos on how to prevent fall risk, and then also a video that will be released soon on how to respond if you do have a fall. So in thinking about the aging process and the effects of stroke, there are many community services that are available through nonprofit organizations that can provide helpful resources for you. It may be overwhelming to figure out what the services are, where to go for them, and who to contact, and who is eligible for these services. One resource that is very helpful is the Area Agency on Aging. The site eldercare.acl.gov is a server that provides a list of resources in your area. When you go to this website, you simply enter in your zip code and it will come up with a list of resources. For this example here, I typed in the zip code for Overland Park, Kansas. And then in clicking the link and clicking on the Area Agency on Aging tab, it came up with the list of in-home, legal, and food services like Meals on Wheels that are all in that area, in addition to services for caregivers like respite care. It also gives some information about costs and provides numbers to call about these inquiries. Additionally, the United Way is a nonprofit organization that is committed to improving quality of life through community programs. In communities that have a United Way, such as Kansas City, you can call the hotline 211 for free and confidential information on resources available in your area. These range from financial assistance, places to go for rehab, or similar information to the Area Agency on Aging that we just talked about. If you go to their website, you can also choose from these options shown on the screen for available resources. This will bring you to a list of contacts in your area. So either calling 211 or going to the website will connect you. And I have also included links for the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way 211 website on the educational handout. Next, if your loved one lives with aphasia, it may be a good idea to have a communication card that they can use in a case where they get separated from you or people they know in public. Here's a nice template that outlines the information that should be included on this card. A description of aphasia and its implications should be provided, in addition to your name and contact information for their primary caregiver or trusted relative. It may even be a good idea to have a backup phone number on the card in case the original person does not answer. Lastly, I think it is very important to have several examples of best ways to communicate with them in a calm way. I agree with all of the tips listed above, such as speaking slowly, asking yes and no questions, and allowing for processing time. In addition, I think another addition would be to possibly provide the person with options for responses. Multiple copies can be made to keep this in a person's wallet with their medical files and in the car when you are traveling. In addition, some people who have stroke are also experiencing emotional lability, which may cause them to laugh or cry at inappropriate times, or even when they are not really feeling this strong emotion. Therefore, a similar card would be helpful to have in stressful situations where these behaviors could be taken the wrong way, such as in working with policemen or in a courtroom. So I think everyone nowadays is looking forward to being able to travel again after the world can go back to normal. We are still doing traveling now though, and whether it be to the store or to a medical appointment. Therefore, it's good to be thinking of things ahead of time in case of an emergency. So if you're going to stay in a hotel, it's important to plan your trips where there is a wheelchair accessibility. Wheelchair accessible hotel rooms have grab bars, lots of room to move around the restroom, a shower bench, and grab bars in the shower as well. These rooms are also generally close to the elevator or hotel lobby. So if your loved one uses a walker or a cane, you may want to see if the hotel has a standard wheelchair to borrow in case they may be unsteady when getting out of the car, and especially when walking all the way from the car to the room. Even if you had a really long time in the car, they may be stiff and unbalanced, so the wheelchair could be a helpful way to make sure they make it to the room safely. Next, try to plan your trip so that you will be near rest stops that are wheelchair accessible. When a place is advertised as wheelchair accessible, this isn't always the case, and I'm sure you all have seen a bathroom stall in a restaurant that does not fit a wheelchair and makes it very difficult or impossible to transfer to the toilet. So therefore, try to look up reviews of these rest stops or ask others who have been on a similar trip to see if the rest stops were actually wheelchair accessible. And next, when you are traveling, it's important to have an emergency kit prepared. Especially in the Midwest, all cars need to have an emergency kit with blankets, gloves, a candle, a lighter, non-perishable foods, and a flashlight. And then when traveling with someone who experienced a stroke or has other comorbidities, it may be wise to include some other items as well. Many people who have had a stroke experience incontinence. If this is the case for your family, it may be a good idea to have a change of clothes, incontinence briefs, or even an external urinal if they have urinary urgency and cannot make it to the next rest stop. Next, it is important to bring your medication list with you in the case that you would need to receive medical services. If you have a loved one who has diabetes, it may also be a good idea to have emergency glucose pills in the car, or some candy, granola bars, or other things with quick sugar that could increase their blood sugar. And then lastly, I really like car canes, which I introduced in one of my life skills videos that's on the American Stroke Foundation YouTube channel. These can be used to assist your loved one in getting out of the car. This object provides a great base of support, so if they are a little weak from sitting for longer periods of time, this would be a great way to help them. This also can serve as a flashlight, it can break a window with the sharp end, and then it can also serve as cutting off your seat belt in a time of emergency. And all you have to do to make this work is you place the long pointed gray end inside of the hinge of your car, and then they just grab onto it and push up. These can easily be purchased online for a relatively low price. Next, there may be a time where you may need to bring your loved one in for a trip to the ER. This can be a scary and confusing time. It may be difficult to know what to bring with you to the hospital, especially in a time where you may be worried, emotionally drained, and anxious. Therefore, I created this short list of important things to bring with you. I will be providing this list in the follow-up email tomorrow. I would advise you to print this list out and keep it near your medical documents where you know you'd remember it in an emergency. And you can also create a more personalized list on your own as well. So the first thing to bring is a list of medications and their primary care doctor and their contact information. It's also advised to list any known allergies. Another example is if someone is prone to bed sores, every time they go to the hospital, the healthcare providers should be made aware to make sure that they are committed to this turning schedule. Therefore, if your family member has any other special considerations like this, it would be prudent to add these to the list as well. Another thing to remember is to bring your wallet with your driver's license and insurance cards. While this may seem like an obvious thing to bring, it could be a small but important detail that could easily be forgotten in an emergency. You also may want to bring power of attorney papers in case that you would need to be present to help or need to present them to medical staff. In addition, make sure that you are not only bringing your own phone, but also the patient's phone and the charger. That way, if they get admitted to the hospital, you can reach them much easier than waiting for a nurse to connect you. Next, it is important to pack sleeping aids, such as the CPAP, in case they may have an overnight stay. Most hospitals do not provide these machines. You should also try to pack a change of clothes for them to wear once they leave the hospital. And you may want to even bring fresh clothes for yourself if you are able to stay with them in the hospital after COVID times. And then lastly, make sure to pack glasses, contact cases and solution, hearing aids, and the cases for all these devices. And then I also asked my mom, who is also a caregiver for my dad, if she had any advice. And she said she always brings some cash with her because this makes it easier to get some snacks from the cafeteria or vending machine, as she says that chocolate can really cure basically all problems in life. Alrighty, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to begin discussing topics related to making decisions about end of life. So while over 90% of people believe that it is important to talk about future and end of life plans, literature shows that about only 30% of these families have these conversations. So therefore, I am going to share some tips based on research that can help you learn how to start these conversations and ways to guide the decision-making process. So experts suggest that starting these conversations about end of life are best done in a familiar place, such as the kitchen table or in the family room. This location will make people feel more comfortable and they'll have a more organic and private conversation. In addition, health providers suggest that if you feel nervous or really don't know when good timing is to start these conversations, it may be a good idea to look for environmental cues. This could include a major news story, something you see on social media, or a movie, or if someone you know passes away. Research also shows that while families that have talked about these scenarios of who would take over plans if the primary caregiver were to die, or if a loved one would need critical care due to an emergency, the decisions they did make were pretty vague and generally did not resolve with a definitive plan. So one of the reasons that families don't always have these conversations and make these critical plans is because they don't always know where to start. So some of the most important topics to cover, according to experts, includes talking about plans for daily care, long-term care, finances, legal planning, and housing as the person ages, or in cases of an emergency. We will briefly go over a majority of these topics today, but I wanted to point out that these topics may be a good thing to jot down now so that when you do have time to start having these conversations, you know a place to start. So these conversations may be uncomfortable, and if people have differing opinions, it especially can be a little uncomfortable. And the nature of the topic simply just isn't fun to talk about either. So all in all, it's important to remember that the plans should try to abide by the wishes of the individual who the plans are being made for. Experts share that a good way to start the conversation is asking the person what their most important priority for their future and at the end of their life. This could include wanting to stay at home as long as possible, wanting to make sure their family is financially taken care of, or other examples. This could give the discussion a good foundation, as those involved can keep these priorities in mind in addition to the person's safety. Opening the discussion will also be a good reminder that ultimately, the decisions are being made for what is best for that person, rather than what people may want for their loved one. Research shows that caregivers who are spouses, children, siblings, or parents, or of someone who has experienced a stroke or other event impacting their function causes anxiety and stress when thinking about the future. This conversation involves the input of the whole family unit, and it is important to consider the perspectives when making these plans. Their perspectives will be different depending on the role the person plays and their stage in life and their knowledge on the person's condition. For example, a spouse or a sibling may be at the same stage in life as the person who needs assistance, so they may have time and knowledge to take over caregiving roles. On the other hand, a child of the person who needs assistance may have a young family or their own, or may be starting a new career, so they may be able to assist with arranging for care services, but may not be able to take on the caregiving role themselves. So it's important that the people in the families that are in various stages be realistic in the amount of responsibility they can take on reasonably. So once it is established how much people feel like they can take on, it's important to identify people's strengths and the potential ability to split up responsibilities. I read a case example where the daughter took on the care of communication regarding medical needs and housing, as she worked in healthcare, while the son dealt with finances since that was in his wheelhouse. Another example of family involvement for those who live far away could include sending gift cards to a family member who may be purchasing groceries for that person in the future. Dividing up responsibilities early on ensures that one person is not overwhelmed with adding all the responsibilities to their plate at once, which could increase the risk of burnout, family tension, and disorganization. And then, unfortunately, there may be disagreements between siblings or others during these conversations, so it is good to designate a leader, which could be their power of attorney or someone who has the closest relationship to them. In addition, some families also invite an outside party, like a social worker, lawyer, minister, or trusted friend, to help lead the discussion, as they won't have as much of an emotional investment in the decision-making process. So in addition, there are often disputes that certain people are not doing their share of the work. It is important that these concerns be voiced, but it needs to be done in a respectful, collaborative way rather than accusatory. This would be another benefit of having an outside mediator to assist in ensuring that these conversations are calm rather than explosive. So next, we're going to talk a little bit more about options for long-term care. A resource that families can utilize includes respite services. These services are meant to allow for caregivers to be relieved of their caregiving duties for a needed break, to run errands, or to go to work. Some caregivers may feel guilty for needing to take breaks, but remember that caregiving is a 24/7 job, and it's important to take breaks for your own mental health. In addition, when caregivers experience burnout, not only are they more likely to have negative emotions, but also have poorer physical and social health. Some questions posed by assistedliving.org for if you're looking into respite services include, is the right for you and your family to include? Sorry, let me say that again. So questions that you should ask yourself if you're deciding if you want to have services include: 1, do you feel emotionally and physically drained on a regular basis or experience resentment toward your family members? 2, are you scared that in a situation you won't have anyone to call? 3, are you neglecting your own health-related needs or is your social life decreasing? And 4, do you ever feel like you are feeling helpless? So if you ask yourself any of these questions and you would answer yes, it may be a good idea to look into respite services. A respite provider will either come to your house. There are respite services at healthcare facilities, and there are also places called adult daycares. In the home, a respite care provider may assist with some activities of daily living, like cooking, dressing, and taking medications, in addition to exercising during the day. In a group setting, participants engage in activities throughout the day that gives them the opportunity to connect with people their age. Respite services place a focus on providing companionship for those who receive these services, as they may be experiencing social isolation. Respite providers are trained in basic first aid and CPR, but are not involved in more advanced medical services. Depending on the agency, the National Institute on Aging notes that one can hire a respite provider for varied lengths of time, whether it be several hours or several weeks. A negative aspect of respite services is that insurance does not usually cover these costs. The national average cost for an in-home respite service per hour is $25. However, Medicaid may cover some services if applicable. The VA also offers some assistance for these services. And then lastly, the area on aging that I mentioned earlier can also refer you to your local respite services that may offer low-cost options. Another option is if your loved one just needs supervision and doesn't need lots of assistance while you're gone, you may want to consider asking family or friends to serve as this respite provider. This would save costs and would still present an opportunity for them to socialize with a friend. While it may be hard to ask others for help, oftentimes these people really do want to help out in your life, and they may not know a way to do it. So you allowing them to help will not only help them feel better, but it will also give your loved one an opportunity to have some fun with someone they like too. I also put a link down below for a respite care locator that can assist in finding services in your area, and these are included in your handout as well. So for a while, I did not know the difference between respite and home health. Respite services are meant to give caregivers a break, and they provide basic services for everyday needs. But on the other hand, Home health services are given by a provider with advanced training to assist with more complex medical needs. Some examples include advanced wound care, IV medications, training on medications and disease management, and rehabilitation services. Unlike respite care, these services are covered by insurance. However, to qualify for Medicare reimbursement, the person must be considered as homebound, meaning that they really only leave their home for medical appointments, church, religious services, or hair appointments. Assisted living facilities would be the next tier of care. They offer assistance with basic activities of daily living, fun activities and wellness programs, transportation to appointments, meals, and cleaning. They also ensure that medications are taken on time. The goal is to still provide the person with as much independence as possible, so tiers of care are generally provided. If a person needs a higher level of care, they may pay a different amount for someone who does not need as many services. Assisted living facilities are often paid for out of pocket. Medicaid can pay for some of the costs through optional state supplements. And so next, the difference between assisted living and skilled nursing facilities is that assisted living facilities do not offer skilled medical services, but nursing facilities do. Skilled nursing facilities generally employ nurses and therapists to provide skilled care for those residing there. In addition, people can stay at a skilled nursing facility for a short period of time while they continue to recover from a medical situation, and many people live there for long term for disabilities such as Alzheimer's. These services can be paid for through Medicare up to 100 days, but many of the services are paid for through existing assets. So I want to preface this slide by saying that I am not advocating for or against getting long-term care insurance, but I just simply wanted to give you an overview of the purpose of this insurance and some of the pros and cons that have been highlighted by professionals to help you start thinking about the best way for your family to pay for long-term care if it's needed in the future. So according to AARP, from an article in 2019, 50 to 70% of older adults over 65 will end up needing some form of long-term care that we discussed. This likelihood may be even higher if you have experienced a stroke or have other health comorbidities. Long-term care could include nursing homes, assisted living, or in-home care, and research shows that 1 year in a nursing home costs a little over $100,000, while in-home services and assisted living facilities are closer to $50,000 annually. Insurance does not cover all the costs as we just talked about, so this long-term care insurance would be able to kick in to cover a substantial portion of the remaining costs, which would protect your financial savings and assets. These plans typically pay $160 a day for up to 3 years. However, some cons are that the premiums for this type of insurance are really expensive, depending on your plan, and they could also cost several $1,000s each year. And as I noted, they only last for 3 years of care service. So many insurance companies have actually stopped providing this insurance because it just started becoming astronomically expensive and people weren't able to maintain it. If you do think that you'd like to invest in this, investors recommend working with an independent insurance agent to help you shop around for the best plan to look into. Because when they are independent, they are most motivated to get you the best deal rather than what's the best interest for their company. In addition, these professionals also recommend that you invest in your early 60s, as the older you get, the higher your premiums likely will be, since there's a greater chance of you cashing in on the insurance plan. And then lastly, there are now hybrid plans, which is a combination of life insurance and long-term care insurance. If you never cash in on any of the money from the long-term care policy, those benefits would be paid out to your loved one. But just know that these hybrid plans are even more costly. So overall, long-term care insurance is becoming something of the past, but I just thought it was important to introduce today. And with this baseline knowledge, it may be wise to seek advice from a family member, a financial advisor, or maybe an elder law attorney to see if seeking this type of insurance would be the best move for your family's needs, or if using savings and government support would actually save you more money in the long run. So now we're going to talk about some important legal documents to create when planning for the future. Experts encourage all adults to designate a trusted person to be their power of attorney. A power of attorney is a person that you appoint to assist in managing finances and assisting in making medical decisions when you are no longer able to do so for yourself. It is important for survivors of stroke and caregivers to designate a power of attorney. So if you were to get in an accident or become seriously ill to a point where you cannot make your own decisions, a trusted person in your life would be able to assist in making legal decisions about finances and medical care. To assist in understanding the legal jargon, the person that is appointed as a power of attorney is often referred to as the agent, and the person that is being, or the healthcare proxy, so the agent or the healthcare proxy, and the term principal is used to describe the person who would be receiving the assistance. An agent should be someone who you trust, who will take time to understand your wishes and honor them. It is crucial that this person knows what is truly important to you. If you become a power of attorney for someone else, or when you are choosing a power of attorney for yourself, they should reflect if they are willing to accept this responsibility, if they feel that they will be familiar with your values and wishes, and if they feel that they can make the decisions you want them to make, even if you don't necessarily agree with that. There are several different types of power of attorney, and it's important to consider the purpose of each kind before choosing. A specific, or sometimes called limited, power of attorney is given control over specified guidelines. For example, they may only be granted to make decisions about real estate. On the other hand, general power of attorney allows for broad decision-making over financial and medical decisions. However, both specific and general power of attorney may end if the principal or the person being represented were to become mentally incapacitated or have a severe illness. On the other hand, a durable power of attorney is responsible for legal, financial, and medical decisions prior to and after a person were to have a mental incapacity. A durable power of attorney allows the agent to apply for financial assistance, assist with selling a house, and with making healthcare decisions based on your wishes. In addition, you may hear the term springing durable power of attorney, depending on the state you live in, which allows the power of attorney to assume the decision-making role only after the person becomes mentally incapacitated and they cannot make their own decisions. So to reiterate, the specific and general power of attorney end in the case of mental incapacitation. Springing durable power of attorney begins after a mental incapacitation, and durable power of attorney can occur prior to and after the occurrence of mental incapacitation. And then lastly, there's also a healthcare power of attorney, which is a separate document that grants the designated power of attorney responsibility for voicing the wishes of their loved one in regard to medical decisions and life-sustaining treatments. This document, which designates a person to serve as a representative, is often paired with a living will and advance directives. If you choose to be a primary power of attorney for your loved one, consider adding a second or third backup to the list on the document in the instance that you were to pass away unexpectedly. If there is not a backup listed and the power of attorney would pass away, this responsibility would then fall on the next of kin. And then once you have chosen a power of attorney, it's important to let your family members know who this person is so they all have an idea of what the plan is in an emergency. So according to a study by the Kaiser Family Foundation in 2017, 96% of participants over the age of 65 stated that they wished they had discussed and put in writing their wishes for crucial medical decisions, emergencies, and end-of-life plans. In addition to a healthcare power of attorney, it is important to reflect upon what types of care you would prefer to receive in the event that you would become comatose or unable to voice your wishes. These wishes should be documented in a living will. This will guide you through various medical decisions relating to end-of-life care. This helps you determine if you'd like life-saving measures in various situations, or if there would be any situation where you want to decline further medical services. You can choose if you want extreme support, such as tube feeding, dialysis, or time on a ventilator. This could also include your preference for receiving palliative cares, or otherwise known as comfort cares, like hospice. In your plans, you could also state circumstances where you would want to sign a DNR, which stands for Do Not Resuscitate. This would mean that you do not wish for CPR or other life-saving measures in the event that your heart would fail. When you are making these decisions, it's helpful to reflect on how your spirituality, fears, costs, and values influence how you live your life and how these beliefs impact your wishes for your future. According to Stanford Health in 2017, a lot of people make vague statements such as no heroics in these plans However, something to consider is your idea of medical heroics could be different from other people. Therefore, it's important to try to have concrete and specific answers when completing this form and in having this conversation with your power of attorney. Once you have created this document and have it signed by witnesses or a notary, you should ensure that the power of attorney has a copy of this document. As previously mentioned, having these decisions explicitly pointed out ahead of time not only ensures that you will get the medical care you want, but it can also prevent any confusion, disagreements, or further distress for your loved one in the event that they would have to make these decisions on their own. So these important documents may be really confusing to complete on your own. Therefore, you may want to contact a lawyer to assist in choosing the best type of power of attorney and to ensure that all your documents are fully and accurately completed. There are lawyers who specialize in working with older adults and their families in making important decisions called elder law lawyers or elder law attorneys. These professionals can assist families in making retirement plans, managing your estate, applying for government assistance, like applying for Medicaid benefits, and preparing end-of-life documentation. In addition, even if you aren't an older adult and are not ready to begin thinking about the long-term plans for retirement, a general attorney that works with estate planning can help younger families in creating living wills and designating power of attorney. Working with an attorney does come with a fee, but this may be a worthy investment if you feel that professional assistance would give you peace of mind, save time, and give sound advice on important financial and medical decisions. However, if working with a lawyer is not of interest to you or is not feasible at this time, there are reputable websites where you can go to for advice and even a free printable version on these documents. Some of these sites include the American Bar Association, AARP, or the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. In going this route, it is even more important to ensure that you have the correct witnesses, signatures, and storage for these documents. And then one last tidbit, I was actually in a hospital the other day and spotted a pamphlet in the lobby called Advanced Care Planning. It had a lot of information about different considerations when making plans for end of life and had actually the entire form to create a healthcare power of attorney included. So it had information on surrounding states' laws as well and had lines for witnesses and notaries to sign. It also had reminders on how to distribute this information as well. So next time you're at a medical appointment or in a healthcare facility, peruse these pamphlets and you may just find these documents for you. Another key step in planning for the future is making an estate plan to make sure your assets go to the right people. One of the easiest steps of an estate plan is to list beneficiaries for your money. You generally list these beneficiaries when you open up a bank account or investment or retirement account, such as a Roth IRA. You can have multiple beneficiaries or contingent beneficiaries, which could get the money if the original beneficiary were deceased. The next step is to create a will, which is different than a living will. A living will is part of an advance directive for medical decisions, but a will is for financial purposes. This ensures that your assets, such as a house, are allocated to the people you'd like them to be. In your will, you can also state who will assume guardianship of your children who are minors. It is important to note that the will only will divide up things that are owned by you and you alone. So if you jointly own your house between you and your spouse, the home would automatically go to that person. This is a very important note to take if your spouse experienced a stroke and both of your names are on the deed to your house. If you would die, then the house would go to them. And if you feel that they would not be able to manage the decisions that involve maintaining or eventually selling your home, it may be wise to talk with them and try to put the house under just one name. Then you can name a beneficiary in your will, such as a child or sibling, that would be able to take ownership of the house if you were to pass away. A drawback of a will is that you have to go to probate court upon the person's death. This is to ensure that their outstanding debts are paid. So some people, to avoid this court time, set up a trust, but this assigns a person, the trust, to divvy out the assets as indicated. However, these are more expensive than wills, and they do also not list guardianships for minors. There are pros and cons to both, so this is another good thing to talk about with a lawyer. And then lastly, the other two parts of estate planning include setting up advance directives and a power of attorney, which we already went over. And then lastly, I wanted to point out that I got a lot of this information on estate planning from the website Money Smart Kansas City. It has a lot of good information about planning for the future and is also just a really good resource in general about investing and good money management. It even has a section for kids and teens for learning about how to save money. So I wanted to go over a couple important reminders before we move on. States differ in their regulations, so it's important to read the fine print and the instructions thoroughly. The regulations for appointing a durable power of attorney and creating advanced directive plans slightly differ even between Kansas and Missouri. Missouri requires a notary and a witness to sign an appointment of a power of attorney, while Kansas gives the option to have a notary or a witness. Therefore, it's important to have a good understanding of the requirements of these documents, what you are signing, and its implications for your loved one. Another important step is to distribute copies of this documentation. The principal and the agent should have their own copies, and another copy in the case of a living will should be filed with your primary care doctor. It is also wise to keep both a paper and an electronic copy in a protected computer in the case of an emergency. Mayo Clinic also suggests that a principal should have a card in their wallet indicating that they have an advance directive and list the names and contact information of their designated power of attorney. Furthermore, make sure to check in on these documents about every 10 years to make sure that they are still reflecting your wishes. For instance, if you stated that all of your money was supposed to go to your best friend, but then that friend moved across the country and you lost touch, there may be a different person now that you would rather allocate these funds to. So another method suggested by Sanford Health is to follow the 5D rule, which means you should evaluate these plans each time there is 1, a new decade, 2, a death of a loved one, 3, divorce, 4, a new diagnosis, or 5, if you have a significant decline in health status. So anytime those scenarios arise, it's a good idea to go over these documents. And then lastly, to reiterate, health experts and financial advisors recommend that all adults over the age of 18 should have a power of attorney and advanced directives. So that includes some of the newlywed students that are here today. So this way, you can ensure that your wishes for your health and assets are followed. And this also saves your family and friends the stress of having to make these decisions and having to go through court proceedings and splitting up assets if you were to have a serious medical condition. So it's hard and scary to think about if you or another primary caregiver were to die before your loved one, which would leave them in the care of the next of kin. Therefore, it's very important to have a conversation with your other close relatives or trusted friends about this circumstance and to have a realistic plan on who would be the next person to step in to care for or make arrangements for your loved one. In this conversation, it's important to outline the various things that your loved one needs help with and share your thoughts on if they could continue living at home with assistance or if they would need to go to a care facility, depending on the availability and willingness of other family members. Next, it is important that family members are aware of your loved one's functional level. For example, a family member who lives hours away may have a very different perception on their abilities when someone who sees them in person multiple times a week. I know that when I was at college, I had a very different view on what my dad could do and couldn't do versus now when I have been living at home. So therefore, having a realistic conversation during rational, calm times can help everyone stay on the same page and can help prevent disputes down the road. These conversations can be informal, but it is helpful to put these plans in writing. So as previously mentioned, make sure you have a backup power of attorney listed on your documents. In addition, this person should know where you keep your important files, such as investment information, insurance, and medical lists. And then lastly, it's helpful to have this information in a safe space that is well organized. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on managing grief. Grief is a natural response to change. Grief is not a linear process and can occur in preparing for end of life or after your loved one has died. Grief can take various amounts of time for each person, and there's no set time that one should all of a sudden stop grieving. It can also present differently in other people, whether this be anger, guilt, or questioning. One way to help in preparation is to have these important conversations and making the tough decisions that are involved in planning for this stage. knowing that your family has a plan and will be taken care of is reassuring and can help in the healing process. Even taking the first step of attending this presentation today can help you through this process. I do feel that this presentation, and even in my research doing this presentation, has even somewhat started the grieving process in thinking about the future. But thinking about these situations does help build your resiliency. And while it doesn't make it any less sad and difficult, it can begin equipping you with the skills to be able to cope with these circumstances. In addition, experts say that surrounding yourself with your support system, made up of family, friends, or community supports like faith-based organizations or support groups, in these hard times can bring a lot of comfort to your life. It's a good reminder of the love you have in your life, and knowing that there are other people who are grieving right beside you can help you through these feelings. And then lastly, self-care includes eating well, getting exercise, and taking time to do the things you enjoy. Research shows that engagement in meaningful activities improves the quality of life and well-being and can help you feel a sense of normalcy. In addition, it's important to practice self-forgiveness and self-compassion. Again, try to remember that grief manifests differently in every person, so there's no right or wrong way to feel and no set amount of time to feel them. Try to acknowledge these feelings and let yourself feel the emotions. If you are interested in learning more about these coping skills, please reach out to me or one of the program coordinators at the American Stroke Foundation to join a support group or get more research on these skills. You can also check out American Stroke Foundation's website to learn about some of the coping strategies that I presented over in my last webinar and in other educational videos completed by past students. So that's the end of our formal presentation. Thank you again for listening, and remember to check your emails tomorrow for a recording of this presentation, as I know we presented lots of information and it may be hard to remember it all. So that's why we're giving you a recording tomorrow. And we'll also be giving you some handouts. So thanks again for your attendance.
Okay, real fast before I stop the recording, I just want to say thank you to Carrie for all this information. This is fabulous. And I forgot to mention, her capstone project is related to caregiver support. So she's been fabulous at helping us with these webinars that are helping educate caregivers and us as staff also. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.